Welcome back. Well, yes, that is what we will be discussing here today. So we've got two gentlemen who will be joining us next to speak on this matter. But before we go ahead and introduce them, just to give you a little bit of a background, this has been going on for a while, this crude oil theft. But we also do remember that shortly before the last administration of President Muhammadu Buhari left, the former NSA, then NSA, Major General Babagana Munguno, did inaugurate an 11-member special investigation panel on oil theft and losses in the country. They had their terms of reference that was spelled out, and then it was all clear, listed there to ascertain the circumstances surrounding the illegal insertion into the Trans-Escravos pipeline and Yokri area in Burutu local government area of Delta State. They were to establish the ramifications of crude oil theft and losses in Nigeria, ascertain the causative factors, immediate and remote, of crude oil theft losses in the country, and ascertain the extent of crude oil theft and losses in the country as well. Identify persons, entities, whether public, private, or foreign, involved in the criminal enterprise, and establish the level of culpability of identifying persons in the enterprise. It goes on and it says to also examine the specific roles of regulatory agencies, security agencies, tiers, arms of government, and IOCs in aiding and abetting the criminal enterprise. They were also to assess the efficacy of security architecture and then go ahead and do all that and submit to the government. So we'll be looking to see if that committee has done anything whatsoever. Where are they? Did they hand over anything to this current government? What do we know? What do we have? What are they going to do about all of this? But to speak about this immediate one, this very recent matter, Mr. Madaki Ame joins us now. He's the former head security planning and strategy for Shell, also managing council legislative development for Shell as well. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today on the program. Good morning. Well, for this kind of matter, I mean, having been there, I'm not sure this is new to you, but with this latest development, considering the kind of efforts we were told were put in place to make sure this doesn't happen, and then the Riot Act read out by the president, current president, saying, look, they needed to end all of this in the region and by extension in the country, as a matter of fact. Does this in any way surprise you that it's still going on? It still went on?
No, I'm not surprised at all, because the problem of crude oil theft has been on for quite some time, just like you said in your earlier analysis. And, it has assumed the dimension of organized crime. So, getting it sorted out once and for all is so much beyond a Riot Act being read by a president. We need to get to a point where people genuinely come up with the commitment to walk the talk, because there's a lot of, grandstanding on television in respect of this crude oil theft challenge. And, when all that grandstanding takes place, because of the limited knowledge of the generality of the Nigerian public about the industry due to its opaqueness, we get to a situation where people get excited about the information that is in the media about things like this. And those who put this kind of information in the media do that deliberately to achieve an end which the Nigerian public does not know about. You get the point I'm making. So, yes, the president read out that crude oil theft must stop, but there is an 800,000 liters capacity vessel. 800,000 liters, by the way, is 24.2 trucks, 33,000 liters truck. So the conventional truck that takes petrol to petrol stations, you have to have loaded 24.2 of them, okay. Let's say 25 of them, with products, before. In addition to your analysis, could you just give us your impression of what you think went on with this particular scenario? Because there are different narratives. If you hear the ship owner, how he said, look, he's a fall guy, and what happened, what do you think went on there? I think someone is just trying to hype his work. And this is my blunt assessment of the situation. my impression is that, you know, first of all, there's a lot that's fishy with this seizure, this alleged seizure. First of all, if you seize 800,000 liters of crude oil, that's a lot of money. By the time you convert it into barrels, you know, and all that. Where is the product? You know, because you can't just seize 800,000 liters of crude oil and then you don't tell us where it was pumped to and what they are going to do with it. And then within a day or so, you know, you have scuttled the vessel and set it ablaze without a court order, without any directive from anybody that that's the right thing to do. And you want everybody to believe that you've done the right thing because you want to send a clear signal that crude oil theft will not be condoned. The challenge, the corollary I draw from that is that, you know, it's like when you arrest a criminal, you know, because that's what these people are. If you arrest an armed robber, then you shoot the armed robber in order to discourage other people from going into armed robbery. It doesn't work that way. This is clearly extrajudicial. And unless we follow due process in getting things done, you know, we're going to get into a situation where we keep running around in circles. And that's where the real risk is. So, you know, because by destroying the vessel the way they have done it, they have destroyed the evidence that they can ever tender in court.
But you know, we've seen these scripts before.
Yes,
so if you say somebody,
in recent times.
So if you say somebody is hyping his work in this particular incident, does that then mean that the one that happened previously with the former chief of defense staff, where he also said, look, this is within the law for us to seize and confiscate the products and the equipment? Because that happened with NNPC was also involved in that one. Was that also a hype of somebody's work?
You know, after I got the invitation to be here today, you know, I also activated some intelligence sources that I'm privy to within the industry. And the information I got, you know, actually through me, you know, really I found that extremely disturbing. First of all, if you plot the coordinates of the, you know, the coordinates that was provided by the NNPC in their notification to the public about this, the exact location of that vessel is 16 nautical miles from the coast of Nigeria, you know, around Ondo State, 16 nautical miles. Bear in mind that, you know, the extent of our exclusive economic zone is actually 12 nautical miles from shore. So what that means is that that vessel was in international waters, not within Nigeria's waters. You get the point? So what was the Tompolo Security Company doing there? Their job, to the best of my knowledge, the duty of policing our international waters and the high seas belongs to the Navy. And then maybe, you know with NIMASA, you know, and so on. The extent of this contract, the Tompolo's, you know, company's contract is actually to police the it's a surveillance contract along the 6 major trunk lines that we have in Nigeria. The Trans-Focados trunk line, the Trans-Ramos trunk line, the Trans-Niger pipeline, the Nembe Creek trunk line, you know. So we have 6 of those trunk lines, and that is where their surveillance work is expected to be done, not to pollute international waters. I'm not saying if you see a criminal wherever you can find them, you should not apprehend them. But the truth of the matter is that it's outside the remit of their contract, you know, to go hunting for vessels that may be lying around, and then you arrest them, and then before anybody can know what has gone on, the vessel is scuttled and set ablaze. By the time you do
from what we saw, I mean, we also saw that the Navy, they did a joint press briefing with the Navy, and we saw, you know, one of the military chiefs saying that this is military bosses, you know, saying that in line with the conjunction or with the instruction from the new chief of defense staff, the new chief of defense staff, saying that they should partner and make sure that, you know, the waterways are rid of oil thieves. You know, they're doing this in partnership with Tantita Security. So could it be that maybe Tantita gave the information and, you know, partnered with them, and that's how they were able to apprehend those boys? Maybe, don't you think that they might have had the mandate assisting the military in that regard, since the military is not constrained by any contract limiting them to coastal waters?
Well, that's a good concept. It's a good way to look at it. But it goes a bit deeper than this. You get the point. The information that, I told you I did quite some background before I got here. And the information, that appears to be within the same security circles is that the chain of events demonstrates a disturbing trend where the criminals who perpetrate this crude oil theft and who have entrenched themselves deeply in the process infiltrate, the security agencies and try to create the sort of impression that is now being created. I don't put it beyond, the entire situation that I don't think that the Navy, as well equipped as they are and as professional as they are, will need the help, of a private security organization to be able to do their work, because that's basically what we have been told. Mm-hmm. If it's about, the barges operating in the creeks and trying to move the crude from where it was tapped from the wellhead up to where the vessels are, wherever they are, to bunker them and take them away, I can understand, that. But if what we are hearing is that, a private security agency is policing the high seas, and arresting vessels and scuttling them in conjunction with the Navy, I think it calls for a probe, a real serious probe, which unearths. And when that probe is carried out, mm-hmm. Information will come out that will surprise. It's not the normal kind of probe, set up a panel and all of that, and then you never get to see the results.
You have called this organized crime.
Yes.
Organized crime is much, much deeper than what we see. I mean, listening to the captain, I don't know whether to call him captain, but the leader of the particular gang now.
There's a captain and then there's Rear Admiral Ferreira.
No, sorry, not the captain. The leader of the criminal gang.
Yes. Oh, okay.
of the illegal vessel. There's a captain of the illegal vessel, yeah? Mm-hmm. He was saying something to the effect that, he got a call from his boss. He didn't really know this. They were told to go and load somewhere. They couldn't stay long. Blah. He called his boss, who told him, okay, leave there. Mm-hmm. It points that there is somebody, he said their vessel was hired. So there are so many loopholes, as you pointed out, that, so many leads that can be investigated. Who is the boss whom he spoke with? Who hired their vessel and, told them to go and load at a certain place? That person certainly had information. I mean, it's not me that's sitting out here that will have information about a wellhead somewhere. So for you, what do you know about this organized crime? What can you tell us? How is it organized? How do people know which wellheads to go to? How do they know that security agencies? How are they able to load 800,000 metric tons?
800,000 liters.
Liters, without being caught. I mean, they were not caught in the process of loading. They were caught when they were already away on the high sea. So it would have taken a while for them to have done that particular loading. What information can you give us?
There are three key segments of crude oil theft. The first segment are the sponsors, people that you can compare to the drug barons, in the drug trade. These are the owners of the crude, or the major beneficiaries of the sale of the crude when it's eventually disposed of. Then the next people in the chain are the criminals, the foot soldiers who actually, like the sort of people you saw on television, the crew of the vessels, those who actually do the tapping, moving the crude from the point where it's stolen into the vessel where it will be eventually carried away from. You get the point? So, and then the final chain is actually, the market where this crude oil is sold into. Mm-hmm. So if you want to end this, the perennial problem of crude oil theft, you must destroy the entire strata of.
Even that last bit is international. Where it is sold.
Yes, you can.
How do you destroy
that?
No,
you can, because all crude have their sources, you know,
their signature,
and there's a signature on it. You get the point. You know every crude from where it's emanating, and every single barrel of crude that you know ends up in a refinery, either a legal refinery or an illegal refinery. You get the point. Now we have a lot of those artisanal refiners in the Niger Delta, you know, creating all manner of problems. We've seen all the fire, the environmental challenges that come from that.
All right.
You know, it's something that is more holistic than what we see. You get the point. And the painful thing is that Nigeria is the only country that has a crude oil theft problem among all the countries that produce crude in this whole wide world. So there has to be a deep level of criminality here that encourages what's going on, because the government just simply looks the other way.
You raise questions about efficacy of the Navy.
Yes.
In this particular matter. But we'll talk about the IOCs as well, of which are they not culpable in this matter?
I don't know about culpability of the IOCs.
You work with the IOCs.
I'm aware, you know, I played quite a lot of roles in Shell. I was head of security planning and strategy. I was the legal advisor.
So you will know.
I was head of land acquisition and claims. I was, you know, I know, I'm aware of the efforts that the oil companies make.
Were they never involved in any of these things? Because the last time...
to the best of my knowledge, the IOCs are not directly involved in any way.
Or indirectly.
Or their staff are not involved in the stealing of crude oil.
Okay,
I don't know what has happened since I left, but the truth of the matter is that there is the criminal ring, you know, is along the chain that I just...
Pardon me, we'll come back to that. Yes. But since you did raise concerns and questions for the Navy, we do have Lieutenant Commander John Danjuma. He's retired now, but he's a former Navy intelligence officer. He joins us virtually. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. So go ahead and give us your impression about some of these matters, because when he says there are huge questions for the Navy, was that the case while you were there?
It's been quite some time that I left the Navy, and I can tell you confidently that this was not the case. If you remember, in the year, is it 1999 or thereabouts, when General Obasanjo took over, there was a case of a whole ship that was missing, and a very senior naval officer was convicted. So you can say that, yes, to an extent, the Navy cannot wash their hands off such happenings, you know, in the field. But the extent to which it has increased today is beyond comprehension. Like the last speaker said, there has to be collusion somewhere. Our former Chief of Navy Staff, Vice Admiral Awal Gambo, said that for you to load such quantity of crude oil, you know, it's not like needles in a haystack. You know, these are massive, you know, tankers that even the blind can see. So we see that it has now become big business.
Yeah, let me ask you, I mean, do you also believe in the school of thought that even at that time, where you refer to 1999, that there were really big boys who were involved in it, the brain behind some of those things, and they were not even convicted, just as we see here today? Do you believe that school of thought?
The oil business is big business. You don't have small boys, you know, going into that kind of a thing. They even have their armies. They have their foot soldiers. That's why it's called organized crime. But I want to say also that, you know, wherever you see things like this happen, you have to look at the locality. You have to look at the people from whose land, you know, such oil is being mined. insecurity or crime generally thrive in an atmosphere where people, support it. If the people in that zone, in that area, do not support it, it will not happen.
All right.
Even if you bring the military, bring the Navy, you bring the Army, you bring everything. So my point actually is that the thinking of the people in that area may be that, wow, there is gold in some parts of Nigeria, and this gold is not mined in favor of the whole Nigerian people.
So now okay. So your theory now is that residents or communities are also involved in this one. Is that your point?
Perfectly.
All right. Let's bring in our colleagues from Lagos.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. Let me just follow up quickly because Mr. Ame said quite a number of things. And it was also said that this vessel has been arrested twice in the past, but somehow it got away. And this is for Lieutenant Commander John Danjuma. And that is a major indictment on security agencies, really, especially the ones who have the responsibility of securing and manning our waters. So help us understand, how is it possible that vessels arrested in the past get away, if that's not indicted on just security, it's an indictment rather on the government itself. So what is the process really, and how is it easy for them to be arrested and then get away, maybe, I don't know, with a slap on the wrist, or is it that they sought the security agencies, arrested again, and they get away?
That question is for me, right?
Yes, please.
Well, I'm not sure of the culpability of the military. If your question is that vessels are being bombed now or destroyed, because in the past, when such vessels are impounded, then they are actually being released to the owners. I am not aware of that. But what I think I want to say concerning this matter is the issue of burning the vessels. I link that to when houses are destroyed, without recourse to the law courts. In parts of Nigeria, they say that houses that have been used by kidnappers, are destroyed. In the same vein, we are saying now that vessels that have been involved in stealing crude oil should be destroyed. One thing that caught my eyes yesterday was the value of the crude oil and the value of the ship that was destroyed. I think that due process should allow us to charge these people to court. They will be able to speak, and then information will come out as to who and who are behind it, and the big boys will now be exposed, and then we can have a solution to it.
If I quickly,
if that happens, then when questions like this are asked, we will know, how to give an answer.
Okay, two issues quickly, Lieutenant Commander.
When are impounded and destroyed, you are also destroying a lot of information that could lead us in preventing such acts happening in future.
Very valid points raised there, but two issues now. First, are you saying that there's a possibility that the crude was not offloaded before that destruction took place?
Just yesterday, I was trying to see about the sleaze, about how far we have come in fighting corruption, particularly, in the NNPC. And one of the sites I saw was how a vessel that they had spent $60 million, to refit, there were issues about that colossal amount. So the point I actually want to bring out now is, in the past 8 years, for example, we have had a president who is the be-all and end-all concerning the oil industry. How come we have not got one single refinery working and we have spent billions?
We'll come to that, Lieutenant Commodore. I just wanted to get from your experience, when vessels are destroyed, vessels bearing crude illegally, is the crude usually offloaded before the vessel is destroyed, or the crude is destroyed with the vessel?
I will answer your question pointedly. I won't confirm in all the cases that even the vessel that was impounded actually had crude oil in it.
Right, so we should actually see this from two angles. There's a possibility that there was even no crude, even though they said they were caught actually getting crude from a jacket. So you're saying there's a possibility that it was just a vessel that was destroyed and there's no crude in it?
Just as I think, and this is my opinion, that even when you sell crude oil, you can say that you didn't sell it. After you mine the crude oil and the vessels have come and legally taken it out, there is a possibility that you can say you didn't sell it and pocket the change.
Okay, I'm trying to really wrap my head around some of the responses here, because they're raising even more questions. But quickly tell us, before we go to Mr. Ame, how are the vessels usually processed when they are arrested by the Navy? I'm particular about the point made that it was arrested twice before and then got away. So how are vessels either operating illegally, bearing illegal crude, what have you, how are they processed in the Navy? Because it's a major indictment, as I said.
Well, I wouldn't put it that it is an indictment on the Navy. You know my background, and you know my people are there. So I am not here to indict them, but I am saying that once a vessel is impounded, you take it to the base, and then the culprits or suspects are interrogated to determine what is happening. And thereafter, they are sent to the police. And if the crude oil or whatever product or cargo is in the vessel is now dealt with, is transferred to other vessels.
All right, well, Lieutenant Commander will come back to you in a bit, but let me speak to our guest in Abuja. Mr. Ame, listening to a former intelligence officer speak about, in the Navy, speak about these things, as Kayode said, raises more questions than answers. In the first place, the fact that security officials had to partner with a private security firm to be able to do the needful. For me, that was a little troubling. And so if we are finding it difficult dealing with these issues at this level, I wonder, what we'll be able to do further. Now, speak to the role that the IOCs themselves could be playing. I'm aware that, the NNPC has a way of monitoring crude that leaves their system, and where they go or where they don't go. How is it possible that, fuel will, crude oil will leave any particular depot and it will be untraceable? Kayode was, asking that question in a particular way, but speak to the possibility of how these things really does work. When crude leaves a particular reservoir, where does it go? The vessel we are talking about, from the statement that was released by the NNPC, it says that this particular company was registered in 2009 and has been inactive for a while.
perhaps underscoring the issues Kade raised about the organization, with the vessel being arrested twice and disappearing twice. From information also available, as you all also know, this vessel has been operating in stealth mode. How is it possible? I mean, speak to us whichever way you think is right, that a vessel will load crude and the authorities, the Navy, the IOCs themselves, the NNPC, will be unaware. Just help us get an understanding so we can have an idea whether or not there are collusions indeed.
Yeah, thanks a whole lot. You raised quite some germane issues, and let's start from the point of view of the fact that as we speak, there are at least 1,000 security personnel in the creeks and in the waterways in the Niger Delta trying to police, the pipelines and the facilities and to prevent crude oil theft and other kinds of criminality in that region. So you can imagine if there are over 1,000 men, deployed by the security agencies, either by the Navy, both by the, in fact, joint security teams that work as a joint task force are operating there in the Niger Delta in different capacities. And so, and if you also realize that the vessel of the size we're talking about cannot go into the creeks to carry crude. All the time they will have to stay far away, from the source where the actual stealing of the crude is done from the wellheads and from the pipelines, and they are transported in barges before they are loaded onto the vessels that then take them away. So it's a chain, and so it's not something that can be described in the simplistic manner that they did in the press conference that was granted. Because, like I mentioned, in my initial comments, when you plot the coordinates that NNPC themselves released in their press statement, those coordinates position the vessel 16 nautical miles off the coast of Nigeria. And that's already in international waters, so it's not within exclusive economic zone. So it's not as if, they caught them tapping. There are no oil facilities that belong to Nigeria that far off. So if they say they actually caught them, taking crude oil from a location, they're just playing on the intelligence and the ignorance of the vast majority of Nigerians, because it is not possible to find a vessel of that size around where oil operations take place.
Well, we got that message earlier,
even in our offshore operations.
But I'm not sure you really understand the question that I'm asking, so please permit me to put it again. How is it possible? Because information available that you also are aware is that they said that about 150,000 liters or so of crude were in this particular vessel that's been caught and destroyed. So how does it happen? If there is a reservoir, and the NNPC has a monitoring system, and the IOCs themselves have a monitoring system, thankfully you work with one of them one way or the other, how is it possible that the crude would leave a particular reservoir, go into a particular tank or whatever it is, and no one will know? We won't call that a theft because there is a monitoring system, or isn't there any?
You'll be surprised that there is no organized, there is no structured working monitoring system for the crude that flows through the pipelines in this country. And that is one of the sad things, because we've been talking about metering, we've been talking about the need to ensure, just like the Saudis do. I'm sure you have watched the video of how electronic, up to the minute, in fact, up to the second data that they get on their crude oil production, and they monitor their pipelines real time online, and you can stay in the control room and see exactly what's going on anywhere along the pipeline. This technology is not rocket science, and it is technology that I'm sure will not cost us an arm and a leg compared to the losses that the country has been encountering from crude oil theft. And that's why I keep telling you, I've mentioned, you know, a few times in the course of this program that, you know, this is organized crime. A lot of people benefit from the sleaze that's going on. And because most Nigerians don't really understand what's going on in the industry, and NNPC and the other regulatory agencies are not helping matters because of the extent of opaqueness of the industry. People just throw their arms up in the air and just hope that there'll be petrol, you know, in the petrol stations when they go to buy. Now it's almost no longer, you know, affordable to most people. But to answer that question, in an industry that is run as a business, anywhere else in the world, the sort of lackadaisical or you know, criminal negligence that's going on right now, you know, where everybody looks the other way and more than 400,000 or 500,000 barrels of Nigeria's crude is stolen on a daily basis, you know, keeps taking place on and on and on, and people just give excuses for their inability to stop it, you know, will not be going on.
Okay, well, Mr. May...
And the point, so this calls for an open probe.
Okay.
It calls for a deeper probe and an investigation that actually goes to unravel what's going on here. Because
which raises that question, pardon me for butting in, which raises that question of the modalities. Recently, one of the leaders of you know, in the Niger Delta came out openly and said that as far as he's concerned, the security agencies, and he mentioned specifically the Army and the Navy, being culpable in this. So if in any way, of course, the Navy has come out to debunk it without, you know, apprehending the man to answer questions as to whether or not. So do you see any chance that any probe will indeed be productive to stop this tide? Because it's been going on, as the NNPC said, for more than 20 years.
Yes, I think a probe properly conducted with a desire to reach an end will achieve the right results. You've seen a lot of probes in the oil and gas industry, you know, but with all due respect to those who set up those probes, I don't think they are done with the objective of actually unraveling what's going on in the industry.
So what would you propose?
It is more like an arm-twisting exercise to enable those who perpetrate this, go behind, pay whatever they need to pay, or get those who are doing the probe involved in the in the sharing of the loot. And once they are comfortable with what they have made from it, then the probe just dies. I've not seen any meaningful probe outcome, whether it's for subsidy, whether it's for crude oil theft. You know, it's just like a ritual. You know, it just keeps happening on and on and on. And I think that's why we need to, you know, come to terms with, you know, a lot of the challenges that we face in the oil industry. The other point I need to make quickly is that it is not as if the problem of crude oil theft in Nigeria has not been dealt with effectively in the past. If we look at the records, and you know, accurate data keeping doesn't lie. If you look at the records, in 2016, just before November 2016, we had this kind of situation, and the problem was severe. You know, Nigeria was producing about 800,000 barrels of crude a day, when we had a quota, you know, an OPEC quota, you know, in excess of 2 million barrels a day. And we had the capacity to produce that quota. But we just couldn't produce it because the crude oil theft was at its height around that, you know, 2015, getting on 2016.
All right.
But in November 2016, the parade changed. And between 2016 and 2019, when somebody was in charge of running the operations of Operation Delta Force, the crude oil production increased from 800,000 barrels when he met it to 2.5 million barrels consistently. And then, you know, and as they say, you don't change a winning team. So if we really want to unravel what can be done differently, the probe should then be what was done within that period that we're able to grow our production from 800,000 barrels a day which is like an economic disaster for an oil-dependent economy, to 2.5 million barrels, and this happened over the course of 13 to 18 months. Of monitoring the process, bumper to bumper, and that person is still alive.
There's certainly a lot that needs to be done and understood, unearthed about the industry with respect to stopping crude oil theft. But there was a statement you made about internationally recognized economic zones in the country being 12 nautical miles. But to understand that it's not actually 12, it is 200 nautical miles for every country. So the vessel, to that extent, was actually on international waters, and not exactly 12, because that's what we also have found out, we find here. But gentlemen, we have to thank both of you for coming on here. Madaki Ame, former head, security, planning and strategy, Shell Nigeria, Managing Council, Legislative Development for Shell as well. We've also had Lieutenant Commander John Danjuma, who is a former Navy intelligence officer. Thank you both for coming on today. We will be back in a moment to talk about how to also address security concerns, but this time in Plateau. Stay on with us.